Over the government's energy deal with Alberta, Stephen Guilbeault is now warning that the deal is fueling the separatist movement inside Quebec. He resigned from cabinet over that MOU, Ottawa's MOU with Alberta. The agreement paves the way for at least one new oil pipeline on the West Coast. Guilbeault says the agreement dismantles several key elements of the climate plan that he worked on when he was Justin Trudeau's environment minister. Stephen Guilbeault is a Quebec Liberal MP and, of course, a former cabinet minister. Nice to see you.
Good to see you, Rosemary.
I want to sort of start with how you got to where you got to in this decision to leave cabinet, because you were part of a government that bought the Trans Mountain expansion. You were opposed to that project, but you were able to sort of get past that and stay in the party and take on cabinet positions. You also stayed when the home heating oil carve-out came. You stayed when the carbon tax was canceled. So what made
consumer
this
component?
Yeah, the consumer carbon tax. So what made this different for you, Mr. Guilbeault?
Obviously, I was disappointed under the previous government when we created a carve-out for carbon pricing in terms of the home heating oil exception. I was also disappointed when we lost a consumer carbon pricing portion, but I understood that it had become politically very divisive. But we still had many elements of a climate architecture plan that myself and others have built over the years. Right. And we still had a shot at achieving what are legally bounding targets in Canada for 2030 and 2035. But what is being proposed in this memorandum of understanding with Alberta would essentially dismantle pretty much with one or two exceptions, all of the elements of the climate change plan that we had that was working. Like, people should understand that for the first time in the history of our country, climate pollution was going down while the economy was going up. Before, if the economy was going up, pollution was going up. If the economy was going down, pollution was going down. They went hand in hand, and we were able to make it to really create a shift. Now they weren't going down fast enough, but emissions have gone down in Canada. The plan was working, and of course you can tweak it. But what is being proposed through this MOU would be the end of the climate plan in Canada.
What is the most egregious part of it? Because I'm sure, as you know, when you talked to the Prime Minister directly about it, but part of the Prime Minister's rationale is that he believes now Alberta will actually do the things that they had only said they might do. And particularly, he points to the industrial price on carbon.
That's a very good example, Rosemary, because the Alberta government further weakened its industrial carbon pricing system. 1 week after signing the Memorandum of Understanding. So I sincerely doubt that Premier Smith has any intention of making good on those commitments, and I don't think provinces should pick and choose which environmental laws they want to respect. And I think we should enforce those. And frankly, we haven't been doing that over the last few months, while provinces like Saskatchewan and Alberta have weakened their carbon pricing system.
But isn't there, in my understanding of the MOU anyway, isn't there a requirement for Alberta to do particular things, and some of this has to be negotiated still, in order to get the things that they want, whether it be investment in carbon capture storage, whether it be the pipeline? Like, there are obligations that Alberta will have to meet, no?
Well, I have supported carbon capture and storage, and the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, says that this is an essential technology. We have put money on the table for a couple of years now. We have billions of dollars of tax credits available for those companies. So this is not conditional on Alberta doing nothing. Those tax credits have been available to those companies. And yet those companies haven't moved, and one of the reasons they haven't moved is because the price on pollution is so low in Alberta that they can't make the project, those carbon capture and sequestration project, profitable. And
I did put some of that to Environment Minister Julie DeBruzen last week, and she said that she believes that there is still work to be done on meeting Canada's 2030 targets, but I guess she wouldn't say that Canada won't meet them. She would only say that she has work to do, and she still believes that the things that were in that memorandum of understanding do not qualify as backsliding of environmental policy. Do you think Canada will meet those goals? Would they have met them before this MOU was signed?
So it's important to understand that as of now, most of these elements of the climate change plan are still in effect. But what is being proposed under the MOU is to either repeal a number of them or weaken them.
Right.
So it is impossible for Canada to meet its 2030 targets if we get rid of the clean electricity regulations. And what is being proposed in this MOU is to create a carve-out for Alberta, where those regulations wouldn't apply for Alberta. And guess what? I mean, Ontario and I believe Saskatchewan as well have already said, well, we want that exception too, and soon enough everyone will want it. We can't, if we remove the oil and gas emissions cap, so it's not a production cap, it's a cap on the level of pollutions from the oil and gas sector, which is now our largest emitting sector and the only sector that hasn't reduced its emissions. We can't achieve our 2030 target. If we delay methane regulation, very powerful greenhouse gas, we were en route to have an agreement to reduce by 75% those emissions by 2030. Yeah. It's been pushed back to another 5 years. There's no reason for that to happen.
I don't know what your conversation was like with the Prime Minister as you were going back and forth in looking at this and seeing if there was anything that they'd be willing to do. But one of the things that people inside the Prime Minister's office told me was that there were also concerns about how Alberta is feeling inside the country as a federation and this rising separatist sentiment. Do you think that was worth addressing through this MOU?
I think I certainly support the Prime Minister's effort to ensure that all Canadians feel they have a place and a role in the Federation. But we've played in that movie before. We bought a pipeline, and the election after we announced that we were going to buy a pipeline, we lost all of our seats in Alberta and Saskatchewan. That did not help at all this feeling, which is based on false perceptions. I mean, under the Trudeau government, oil and gas production almost doubled in Alberta. It increased at a faster pace than it did under the Harper government. So this idea that somehow the Trudeau government prevented Albertans from developing themselves is simply not true, because the federal government does not cannot tell provinces how to use natural resources. This is, as per our constitution, this is a provincial jurisdiction. So I, as an environment minister, I couldn't tell Alberta you can't use your oil, no more than I could tell Quebec you can't use your water for your dams. Right. So this idea that it's simply not true, but there is clearly a sentiment by some Albertans that they don't see themselves in the Federation. But we also have to be careful, because we have a very strong separatist movement in Quebec. And it's not just a movement, it's a political party, it's won elections, it's done 2 referendums. The PQ's been leading for the last 30 months in the polls in Quebec, and they have said that they will hold a 3rd referendum. And there is a feeling right now that by abandoning our climate goals, we are fueling the separatist movement, which is using this, and we can see it in the House of Commons this week with many questions from the Bloc Québécois, but also comments here in Quebec. We are fueling the Quebec separatist movement. So I don't think, as a federation, we gain by trying to appease using a solution that failed before. We're trying to appease separatist movement in part of the country by fueling them in another part of the country.
You endorsed Mr. Carney for Liberal leader, and at the time you talked about how long you'd known him and how you had worked with him on climate-related issues previously. Did you misjudge him?
No, I don't think I did. I think I've come to the conclusion that him and I have a different view of how we should go about fighting climate change. I think his view is that it's largely going to be up to the markets, and that government have a role to play in terms of providing incentives, tax credits, and things like that. But I think I've come to believe that he doesn't see that there's a role for regulations in fighting climate change. And a plan that was elaborated by myself and others over many years had a combination of fiscal measures like carbon pricing, industrial carbon pricing, regulations, but also massive investment. The 2022-2023 budget provided more than $160 billion of tax credits and investment for clean technologies, for renewable energy, for clean electricity, for interties, so that provinces that generate more renewable energy can sell some to their neighbors that rely more on fossil fuels. So this idea that our plan was all stick, no carrots is not true either.
Do you? I'll just end on this. You were, I think you're first and foremost an activist. That's certainly what you were before becoming a politician. And I wonder whether your departure from cabinet tells us anything about whether activists fit in the political arena.
I mean, I was a cabinet minister for 6 years. I think that's it's a pretty good run. Very few people can say that, so I feel fortunate and privileged to have been able to do that. In our parliamentary system, if you're a cabinet minister and you disagree with a decision or position from the government, your only recourse is to leave cabinet, and that's what I felt I had to do.
Okay, Stephen Guilbeault, I'm sure we'll speak again. Thank you for making the time for me today.
Thank you very much, Rosemary.